Welcome to the Festival of Entrepreneurs, recorded live at the NEC in Birmingham. Over the next few minutes, you'll hear from some of the most incredible founders, investors, and business leaders who joined us this year.
My opening question is, have you ever heard a business owner saying something like, "Oh, my business was so much easier when we were smaller"? And we meet loads of business owners who actually find the bigger their business grows, the more they're being pushed to do something that isn't really their wheelhouse, managing a team of people or loads of people, depending on how big you get. And that challenge is real, right? At People Puzzles, I go to a conference now and there's 100 people there. And I think, I haven't seen you for 6 months. I don't know if I can remember your name. And the name badges thing is really helpful, isn't it? Because it avoids a bit of embarrassment with those kinds of things. But I started People Puzzles back in 2010. And I really wanted it to be a business that was all about commercial HR, helping businesses grow. And I was 30. I had loads of energy. I could go to everything. I could do everything. I lived in London at the time, and I would be in the morning at a business breakfast, and then I'd be out all day with a client, and then I'd go to a networking event after work. I was out working from dawn till dusk. And I was really integral to the life of the business. I was full on, 100 miles an hour, busy. And life happens, doesn't it? So about 4 years after I started the business, my mum's cancer returned, and everything changes in an instant, doesn't it? You suddenly have to put the busy things that you're doing to one side and be where you need to be. She initially had a sort of good outlook, and actually the point when sort of things changed was she went into hospital. She was feeling quite sick, and you just think, okay, bit of sickness, she'll be out by tomorrow. And actually, she never came out of hospital and went downhill very rapidly. And so I spent probably a total of about 8 weeks. 5 weeks of sort of sitting in hospital, 3 weeks of being, dealing with all of the aftermath of such a significant death in my life and in my understanding. And so I did 8 weeks of sort of no work at all, I'd say, like the odd phone call. I think I remember leaving the hospital and driving to one prospect meeting and then driving back to the hospital. And, it sort of shocks you, doesn't it, that you've been 100 miles an hour with your business and suddenly you're not there at all. And looking back on that time, I think if that had happened a few years earlier, I probably would have had no business when I'd come back, because who would have had any guidance? How would we have known what to do? And I think it was more by luck than judgment that I had spent that time sort of, as I'd been building up People Puzzles, really bringing people into the inner circle. And in that time, we won new clients. We actually hired new staff members that I'd never met, and we developed new marketing strategies. And actually, even in that 8 weeks, People Puzzles grew, and I did absolutely nothing. And it made me realize how important and valuable it is that the founder is not the only person who is leading a business, that the business can happen without them. It made me realize that we had other people with the same clarity and alignment and understanding of the direction in the business. It wasn't just me. It wasn't just the Ali show. And then I thought, well, actually, that is a principle I really want to build on and I want to hold on to. I want to have a business that is greater than my abilities, and I want to have a business that the impact is greater than the impact I could ever have myself. And there's a nice photo of me that I've forgotten to show you. So it's funny, isn't it, being a founder, being in that sort of chaotic world where everything rests on your shoulders, but realizing maybe you don't want it to be like that. And I sort of called this building the dream team, because that's a sort of aspiration, isn't it? You want your business to be a place where things happen without you and decisions are made that are better than just the ones you would have on your own. So why does an SLT make all the difference? Well, it's important for loads of things, isn't it? If you're looking for an exit, any buyer is going to want a business that can function without you. Maybe not straight away, but within a certain amount of time. If you're looking for investment, the risk of just you knowing everything is too great. If anything happened to you, it would be a risk to the business or just a constraint to growth. If you want to expand into other parts of the UK or overseas, you need to be able to split or sort of multiply your time, which is difficult to do. Or maybe you just don't want this business to be your 24/7 forever. You want to be able to do something different with some of your time. You might have other businesses you want to start, or you might have other hobbies. So just to set that in context, I've been at People Puzzles 15 years, and I've worked with over 100 ambitious, growth-focused, mid-size and smaller businesses. And I've really seen the journey that people go on, which often starts with chaos, that startup phase of madness, and moves hopefully through a process of chaos to a bit more structure on the other side. Sometimes I call this talk From Chaos to Structure. And there are definitely some pain points that we've seen typical businesses hit. So your business might be in one of these points. Let me run through them quickly. So your startup phase, often under 10 or 20 people. And that's quite easy to run because as a CEO, you know everybody. You know the names of their dogs or what their children are up to at school. It's easy to communicate because actually there's just not enough people around that you've got the complexity that it starts getting tricky. And so there's usually low levels of management pain. And strategically, your main things, I think, are how do we hire great new people when we can afford to hire somebody else? And how do we make sure that people are on top of and doing their jobs, which includes management skills? Then you hit what could be potentially another brick wall. And I feel that people often hit this around the sort of 30 to 40 mark, where the businesses become more complicated. And it's not as easy for one CEO, top dog person to run the business on their own. Mostly you've got a hierarchy, so your frontline staff are one or two levels away from the CEO, and there's more differentiation. Like there might be people in your business that you don't even know what they do day to day anymore because their finance skills are beyond yours or their marketing skills are beyond yours. But actually, there's not enough people around that you lose that impact of the personality of the person at the top. Everybody still knows you. They still get to talk to you every now and again. And that sort of shadow that the CEO or founder can project is still well and truly over the business. But these businesses can often be a bit chaotic. You've got there, like there's little delegation or it's not very clear. Titles become important. Who does what? And actually, a classic of this size business is you've outgrown some key people that were really important to you before. So you've got some people in the wrong jobs around. And if People Puzzles is an example, I, as a CEO of People Puzzles, had never run a business of that size. I'd never managed a budget of more than £10,000. I'd never line managed more than 2 people. So I was big time learning on the job. And by the way, you're learning on the job in front of people who are often more experienced than you, often older than you, and know a lot more than you. So it's like a crazy time. And you're so busy, there's so much going on that you often don't take the time to think, let me sit down and form a senior leadership team, a team that's going to be here and drive the business forward. And actually, it's the key moment. It's a key moment to look at who, alongside the CEO, is helping you to build and develop the business. And another classic moment, I think, is the restructure that has to happen at this point. Businesses have often grown organically up until around now. When you start sort of wrestling your business from chaos into some sort of structure, you often find there's some roles that aren't quite right or the departments don't sit quite right, and you need to look at who's doing what. So that's one barrier to growth, getting your people stuff right at that kind of size. But then again, you can hit another brick wall. And I'd say this is about where People Puzzles is at the moment. It's sort of this pain barrier of how do we get through this tricky period of growth? We've got about 110 people at People Puzzles. How do we organize ourselves in the right way that then we can go on the next level of growth? It's a challenge, and building an SLT that works and can take you on that journey is no easy feat. The middle management in particular is something that you need to put time and attention into at this point. So it's not just your SLT, but it's looking at that next level of people down. How do they lead? How do they manage? How do they carry that company culture through into the next level down of employees? And again, I think at this size, you often have external investors or funders, or perhaps pressure from shareholders that aren't around all the time. And so you're having to be a whole lot more intentional, better plans, pre-prepared business plans and what you're going to be doing this year. And again, as you get even bigger, there are more pressures on that, and you have to sort of reinvent the SLT again. And our view at People Puzzles is the more you plan to overcome these barriers to growth, the easier it is not to get stuck. Usually growth means more people and hopefully more efficiency, but you cannot just add people and expect a business to work. People need to work in a functioning organisation. I'll give you an example. Worked in a client, had a new sales manager starting, and not only did his line manager have that week booked in America to visit clients in the States, but there was no desk or no laptop. And how does it feel as a senior leader coming into a business where nobody is ready for you? And by the way, that's not a fancy that happening in one of our clients. That is just standard in growing, ambitious companies that I'm afraid are slightly disorganized because they're moving at pace. So you might feel that your business is at slightly more of the chaos end of the spectrum, or you might feel that you are quite well structured at the moment, or maybe you're somewhere in the middle. So my challenge to you today is, have you got the structure right? Have you taken the time to get ready for the next stage of growth so that you can plan to avoid chaos and face head-on into what's coming ahead? Are your senior leadership team ready? And one of my favourite models that I talk about a lot, oh, there's my chaos picture. I'm not very good at this slide changing, am I? Is Metcalfe's law. I don't know if you've come across this before. It's an economics principle, and it's all about the increasing nature of complexity. So it's very simple. In the first picture, you've got 2 users and 1 connection. In the second picture, you've got 5 users and you've got 10 connections. And in the third one, you've got 12 users and a joyful 66 connections. So if you've got a team of 12 people in your business, there's 66 connections going on in the business. So just adding 5 more people is not just a simple matter of adding 5 more people. It's adding an exponential number of connections into the system. And so
Today, there's a special guest thing to be on the keynote stage. It's the story of Absolute Colding, Maxime and Darcy Laceby. Starts on 5 minutes, keynote stage, don't miss.
fantastic. So growing in complexity raises questions like, how would my business work at double the size? And by the way, that's a great exercise. If you've got an hour free, just sit and say, today I'm this big. What's it going to look like when I'm twice the size? It makes you think what is possible. If you haven't done that, it's fantastic exercise. The second question is, where is my system failing at the moment? Where are the things that are really putting pressure on us? And actually, are some teams working and some an absolute disaster? Because by the way, most businesses as they grow, some teams work pretty well and other teams are an absolute disaster and they need a bit of time and efforts to sort out. And that's why at People Puzzles, we really believe that people structures need a strategic plan, not just a ramshackle reactive approach. And that often can be where companies get to with their people. And sometimes you can end up thinking, have all of my people got worse? And I'd say, no, actually what's got worse is the system. You haven't got a system ready for this number of complex users in the system. So let's have a look at your navigators, hopefully your SLT dream team. This is your team to lead the wider business. Hopefully it's a team that can articulate, fully understand, and can lead on delivering the business plan. And I've seen some common pitfalls. The first one is there is no business plan. So we were working with an immigration firm in London. They're about 4 million turnover. And I sat down and said, what's your business plan? And they said, to be slightly bigger next year than we were last year. I said, that's not quite the kind of plan. But by the way, they were doing that pretty well. They'd got to £4 million with no business plan. And actually to come in and say, let's make a plan for growth. Let's make a plan that instead of being 4.2 million next year, you could be 5 or 5.5. How would that plan look? Another challenge is that people are on the team because they've been there for ages. we worked with a guy, they did moved servers. Apparently it's quite a complex bit of moving of offices. And they had a guy on the team, one of his dad's friends, who'd been there for 20 years and just was totally ill-equipped for the job he was doing now and for the size they were. And a big thing that was stopping their business moving forward was one senior member of the team being paid a very good salary who was just not able to go with the business to the next stage. Another challenge we've seen is that there's not enough clarity about what you're aiming for. So again, we often go into businesses where there's 3 or 4 shareholders, but there's no common agreement on what the next 5 years is going to deliver. Are they looking for a sale? Are they looking to part exit? Are they just wanting to be still there working in the business with it being bigger in 5 years' time? They've never had those honest conversations. So what I'd encourage you to think about is on your SLT or senior leadership team, if you've got one, you might be just thinking about starting one or building one. So the first question is who? And if you're going on that growth journey, a really nice way to do it is to sit with a blank piece of paper and say, in 2 years' time, who would I want to be on it? And let's draw out a grid, a hierarchy, some job titles, and say, well, I'm here today on my own, but in a couple of years' time, I want to have these people on the team. Or if you've already got an SLT, maybe you're saying, have I got the right people on the team? And an honest review of each person on the team, just on your own as the leader of the business, can be really helpful. I don't know if you know that EOS model that is about gets it, wants it, can do it. Have you seen that one? GWC, they call it. So can each person on the team, do they get their job? Can they do it? Do they want it? Are they capable of doing it? And that unearths a lot, by the way, if you actually sit and do that for your team members. And there's one thing doing that, but it's another thing going, okay, I've got some people that need to leave. And at People Puzzles, we often go into businesses where they know somebody on the SLT has to go. And that is quite a painful journey because the pain of not only asking somebody to leave, and maybe there's some financial package that goes with that, means you've got a hole. So someone else has to pick up extra work that they've got no time for. And then going towards looking for a new person. It's time, isn't it? And facing into difficult things is painful. But the thing I really believe is that if you've got someone on the team who's not right, honestly, the day they walk out the business, the atmosphere in the team is totally different. It can actually address loads of poor performance in the business when somebody who hasn't been doing their job properly goes. It's a clear signal to the wider business that we're not going to put up with what doesn't work in this company. So how can an SLT work? Well, actually, meetings working effectively is huge. Do you have great discussions and healthy conflict in your SLT meetings? We've been to meetings of all sorts, from people screaming at each other and almost getting to physical fights, on the other hand, to nobody ever questioning anyone else's decisions and just going along with what one person has said. So healthy conflict is a really interesting concept, isn't it? Do you want people just to agree with you because you're in charge? Or do you want people to say, well, have you thought of this? I'm not sure that bit's going to quite work. And being a business that encourages your team to challenge you and challenge the status quo often ends up with a better outcome. I did a lot of work for a few years with a media agency, and they had a team of 3 directors. And I used to facilitate all of their senior management team meetings because they actually weren't capable, the 3 of them, of having a conversation on their own. It was part of their dynamic that although they liked working together, they couldn't have a meaningful conversation without a third party being involved. And the SLT meetings were like Groundhog Day. So we get the list of actions from the last meeting. I'm going to change your name here. Daniel, have you done this? No. This? No. This? No. Okay, this is a really meaningful meeting. You've done absolutely nothing that you agreed to do from the meeting last month. And that is one of the most frustrating places to be. You might have the right people on the team. I'm not sure he was the right person, if I'm honest. But how those meetings work, are they actually driving the business forward? And what we do at People Puzzles now is at the end of every SLT meeting, you have to give it a score out of 10. What do you give this meeting? Why? And we've got to the point of being very honest about that. So some meetings get 5s and some meetings get 9s or 10s, but it's about doing better meetings next time than last time, because otherwise it's a very expensive couple of hours that you spent with your team. And then the next thing I'd encourage you to think, you've got who, you've got how, is get a model that works. So here are a couple of models that we use at People Puzzles. So the one on the left is our strategic people planning model. At People Puzzles, we talk about why does everything that you do with your people have to hang off your business strategy? Well, that is because if you don't start with what you're trying to achieve, people are going to do any old thing. So you start with your business strategy, and ideally it's written down on one A4 piece of paper so that with everybody in your whole business, you can share why are we here and what are we trying to achieve. And then we build out a people plan around these areas: leading, culture, talent, the structure of the business, and how we do the people processy stuff that takes into account the complexity of running a business and the number of users you've got in the system, but means that everything's aligned. And the second one, if you haven't read this book by Patrick Lencioni, The 5 Behaviors of a Cohesive Team, I would thoroughly recommend it. What he talks about is how you can't just go for results with a business. You have to start with these layers. How do you trust each other? How do you deal with conflict in a healthy way? How as a team do you commit to where you're going? And how do you drive accountability and results? And at People Puzzles, we've been evolving our SLT. Every year, it seems to evolve a little bit. And I'd like to say you can sort out an SLT quite quickly. But in reality, I just don't think you can. Yes, certainly you can get a really difficult, troublesome person off the team and it doesn't cost as much, or it's not as difficult as you think. But it does take time to find the new right person, to train them, to bring them into how your business works. And if you haven't come across the phrase fractional yet, I'd really encourage you to get stuck into it. So the rise of the fractional worker, do you like have cut these people in half? I think that's pretty stylish graphics I've got going on there. But this is what we do at People Puzzles. You get a slice of a very experienced board-level director, maybe on a 1-day-a-week basis. So you don't need to afford them or need them or want them full-time. But on a part-time business basis, they can really bolster your senior leadership team for as long as you need them. And we work a lot with the CFO Centre, who are here today, providing fractional finance directors, and there's lots of other fractional providers out there. It's sort of the new thing in the market. So one size doesn't fit all with building your dream SLT. So I'm going to leave you with a few questions. The first is a challenge. Do you have confidence that your SLT gets it, wants it, can do the job, and is ready to drive your business forward? And if not, it's probably time to spend some time, effort, energy, money on getting your SLT into the right place. The second is, what's the vision? What do you want your SLT to be like in 12 months? Because that's like the minimum time frame for seeing real change. When we wanted a managing director, we were really clear about what we wanted, and we went on an 18-month journey to get them into post. And then finally, I'll just end by sharing an African proverb with you, which you will have heard before. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And having a team in your business, so it's not you on your own, is crucial to that long-term growth.
Thanks for watching this special episode from the Festival of Entrepreneurs. Our mission is simple: to help founders and business owners grow faster, think bigger, and take action. And if you were part of the event, thank you for joining us and being part of the community. And if you missed it, don't worry. We'll be back with even more ideas, inspiration, and opportunities to help you take your business to the next level. You can find out more and register for future events at festivalofentrepreneurs.co.uk.